Perfect. Okay, so thank you all for joining us today for our workshop on LinkedIn Lab, Optimizing Your Profile. And I hope to be able to share with you some tips for networking and job searching. And thank you to everybody who registered ahead of time and provide the information as to what they were looking to get out of this workshop, as well as what kind of experience that they already have with it. And so we've seen a great range in the people that are attending today, either people that don't have profiles already, have profiles but started them recently, as well as people who have had profiles for a while but are looking to improve them. And so we're going to try and cater to everybody here and really get a little bit of everything to help you with your journey. So a couple of tips and rules that we want to keep in mind. We ask everyone to please remain muted with your video off during the presentation, just so we can make sure that it goes smoothly. The presentation portion of the webinar will be recorded and made available for viewing. So the slides can also be made available on request. So feel free to just relax, sit back and listen, and really try and gather in the information. You don't have to worry about taking intense notes if you don't want to. Please add any of your questions to the chat. I'm going to stop at regular sections and look in the chat and try to answer everything. And at the end, there'll be time as well for us to have more of a discussion. We can pull up different examples if you want, and I can give feedback. But overall, this is a safe space. We want to acknowledge everybody's lived experiences and ask that mutual respect be given to all participating today. And just because of that, non-compliance will result in removal for the event. So just everybody try to be on your best behavior so that we can get through all the content and we can really learn together. Okay, so you may be asking, who am I and what is my experience with LinkedIn? So I am the lead of the research training programs at the University Health Network in the Office of Research Trainees. And so my job is really to help trainees at UHN to help in any kind of way through their research training as well as through their career development. And it's actually a passion of mine. So I love meeting with different trainees. I love meeting with people in the research environment and guiding them across their path. And so my experiences with LinkedIn are through building my own profile. I built my profile at the beginning of my graduate degree. I did my PhD at the University of Toronto in the Department of Molecular Genetics. And I continued using LinkedIn and optimizing it over time, learning from other people and what I saw and what I thought worked. I also attended many LinkedIn courses so that I can learn more tips, and I found that that was useful. Perfect, thank you. And I really think that LinkedIn was instrumental during my career exploration and job search. The only reason I actually saw this current job and the reason why I got it was because of LinkedIn. And so I'm a firm believer in using LinkedIn as an active tool for your career development as well as for your job search. And I hope I can share with you some of the tips that I found to be the most useful. Now, I just want to note that all of the tips that I will be giving today will be for the free version of LinkedIn.
Wait, what?
No. Oh.
I can make you understand. We on lunch?
Sorry. All of the tips given will be for the free version of LinkedIn, not premium. And that's just because I think the LinkedIn version that's free is amazing. And I think it has a lot of features that are really useful. I don't think that you necessarily need to have a premium account. There are some perks of it, but we're going to focus on the free ones. So throughout this presentation, I'd love to get some kind of interactive nature to this presentation. So what I'm doing is using Poll EV or Poll Everywhere. And the way that you can respond to this poll is there's a link at the top, pollev.com/AmandaVerry635. And if you go to that website, the question should be prompted and you should be able to fill in your answer about what you think about LinkedIn. Now you also have the option of texting and the information is there as well to submit your answer. And so this is really just an opening question. What do you think about LinkedIn? Also just to try the platform and make sure that it's working for the other questions that we'll ask during the event. So if you could go to the website and drop in some ideas of what you think about LinkedIn. It's all anonymous, so don't worry about sharing your thoughts. Perfect. So we're getting some initial thoughts. Definitely, it can be overwhelming. That's a good one. Social tool, hard to keep updated. Okay. Crazy. Great. I love some of the great networking, job hunting, accomplishments, social media. But overall, what we're seeing, this word cloud is sized by how many of you are writing that response. And you can see that a lot of you find this overwhelming. But that's okay. And hopefully we'll be able to really work on that together so that it feels less overwhelming, and that this networking and job tool and these opportunities and all these other great things about LinkedIn can feel a little bit more normal and a little bit more easy to do. And at least you know you're not alone. There's lots of people that find this intimidating. So that's fine. Okay, so one of the first things is to ask, why use LinkedIn and why do people use it, and what are the benefits for you to have a LinkedIn profile? And the first thing is for visibility. It really is a great tool for being able to build your brand. And what this means is if you have a future supervisor or you're applying to a job and they want to learn more about you and they Google you, what do you want the first thing they see when they Google you to show up? Likely it might become your Facebook page or your TikTok or something else about you. But it'd be really great if these people found the first thing about you was your LinkedIn profile, and your LinkedIn profile gave you all the information that they needed to really get a good glimpse of who you are and what you have to offer to that position. So it really allows you to put that information out there that you want people to be able to see. I think one of my favorite things about LinkedIn is that it's wonderful for research. I use it for all kinds of research, including searching for career titles if you're not really sure what you're interested to do. Or if you know you have a career that you want to go into, you can look up different people and see their career paths. You can also search more into different companies and learn more about them that way. So it's a really great research tool. Most people use LinkedIn for networking as well, and this is such a powerful tool for making new connections as well as maintaining your connections that you already have. And we're going to go through that a lot later. And lastly, of course, there's always the way to use LinkedIn for applying for jobs. And like I said, that's how I got my job, and I'm really happy that I did. So I can be a testament of how well it works. Okay, so getting started. Now, the basic tips, the simplest thing to say is if you don't have a profile yet, just jump in. I know it can seem really overwhelming, but really the best thing you can do is just start. And your profile does not have to be perfect right away. Mine definitely wasn't. It took me years to craft. And even then, my profile isn't perfect by any means. I'm always improving it. But just start somewhere and just work to continually improve it. And every step you go, it'll become better and better, and it'll become easier and easier to do. Next, and this is going to come up a lot, is define what your goals are for using LinkedIn, and always keep that in mind when you're working on your profile. So if you're at the start of your graduate career and you're not looking for jobs yet, your goal for LinkedIn might just be to get your name out there, to build your brand, and to do career exploration. And that's great because that means that you can slowly build your network over time without having the pressure of optimizing it for any specific careers. If you're at the stage where you're at the end of your research career and you're ready to find a job, then that's great because you really have the opportunity to keep that in mind and tailor your profile for the jobs that you're looking for. So always try to think about that goal and keep it in mind while you're working on it. Lastly, try to really fill in as many sections as possible. There are lots of sections there, and you can do it slowly, but it's important. The most appealing profiles are the ones that are completely filled in, and they really look like you put the effort into it. And then lastly, there's no right set way to use LinkedIn. Like I said, I'm going to give you examples and I'm going to give you my experiences with it. But just like resumes and cover letters, you can show your resume and cover letter to 1 million people and they'll all give you different input because everybody has a different personal style. So definitely just play with it, find the style that you like and just go with it. So here's another question that I have for you. Keeping that in mind, what is your current goal for using LinkedIn? And it'll only let you pick one goal. So try to choose your main goal. What are you trying to do right now? Good. So it seems like a good mix. And that's totally okay if you don't know what you're using it for. Great. Okay, so it seems like we have a perfect mix between people that are trying to build and maintain their network, people that are setting themselves up to find jobs in the future, which is great. It's great to do those things in advance. And then people who are looking for academic jobs as well as non-academic jobs. And we'll talk about how you can change your approach for each of those different strategies. But I will say in general, and we'll come to this again later, is that finding academic jobs is not necessarily the purpose of LinkedIn, and there aren't as many academics on there, but there's still lots of things you can do to help get your academic jobs using LinkedIn. Okay, so let's move on. So getting started. The first steps are really just to jump in. So of course, we'll start with the simple things is your name, and you'll notice here that I also put my PhD in there as well into my title, just because as a young looking person, I feel sensitive about people not knowing that I have a PhD. So I like to make sure that's obvious right off the bat. You can also add your pronunciation, which I love. I know my name is really easy to pronounce, but I put it there because I want people to know that this tool exists. And I want people to know that I really enjoy learning how to pronounce people's names properly so that when I meet them in meetings, I can feel confident using the right pronunciation. So I encourage you to all do that. And I really have my pronunciation there as a way to encourage other people to do the same. And same with pronouns. LinkedIn only recently, as of last week, I think, added the capabilities to add your pronouns. And I think that's a great tool. And so what this means is I always make sure that before I go to a meeting with somebody, if I have them on LinkedIn or if they're a new connection and I've asked them for an informational interview, it's a good habit to just go and check out their pronunciation and their pronouns first so that you make sure you're doing that research and seeing what the best way to refer to them is. Okay, so next after that, we have obviously the profile picture and the background photo. We're going to give you a couple of tips on how to do that. So first, picking the right profile picture. So I use here an example of Kevin Smith, who many of you will know is the CEO of the University Health Network. And I did that just because Kevin has a great profile picture that I think captures a lot of the tips that I'm going to give you. So first, you obviously want to pick a recent photo that looks like you. So that should be obvious, but needs to be said. Use a picture of you that is just by yourself and that's not cropped from a group photo. And you might think that it doesn't look like it's been cropped, but sometimes you can really tell. And the same thing, lots of people try to use pictures of selfies and they don't think that it looks obvious that it's a selfie, but a lot of the times you can tell with the angles and the lighting. So just try to use a picture of just you. And hopefully, as we get back to normal and COVID ends, we'll have some events in the future where the ORT can provide photo sessions where we can take pictures for you. Next, out of all of the sessions that I've taken from recruiters and LinkedIn experts, they've all suggested to take photos with simple or white backgrounds. Now, this is just a guidance. A lot of people say it makes the picture pop more. You'll see that my profile picture isn't like that. So you still get to pick your own choice, what you like, but that's definitely by far one of the biggest things that a lot of people have recommended. Make sure the picture is zoomed in, so at least 60% of the circle is filled with your face, and where to work for your current job or your dream job. So, if you were going to a job interview or applying for jobs as CEO of a hospital, you might want to wear a suit like Kevin is doing. But if you're going for a career that is more casual, then you're welcome to wear whatever's comfortable for you in that role. So scale it appropriately to what you think. Now, there's also an option to add a frame to it if you are hiring or if you're open to work. And I just show you here what it looks like. And this can be a great way to tell people in your network that you're open to work. Now, this is one of the biggest recommendations I give to people when they're looking for jobs is to make sure that everybody you know and everybody who cares about you, everybody who knows about your skills, make sure that they know that you're looking for a job and what you're looking for. And this just means that people can go about their daily lives, and if they see something that they think that you would be a right fit for, they can send it to you. And this is something I do with my friends and my colleagues and my old coworkers all the time. Is I'm always on LinkedIn, so I can easily see positions and send them to people who I know are looking. And I just mentioned this here because you don't necessarily have to add the frame on LinkedIn, especially if you don't want your coworkers or your boss to know that you're currently looking for other jobs. But there are other ways to do that, which I just mentioned. You can always email them or send them messages instead, but always definitely tell people that you're open to work. Okay, so picking a background, a lot of people don't change their background, but I think it really jazzes up profiles and makes it a little bit more compelling and a little bit less generic. So you'll see this is the background that I have on my profile, and this was really my way of showing that I like to do egg art, which is drawing different pictures with microbes, and I did this a lot during my PhD in microbiology, and so I really wanted to capture that to show that I have this background in science communication. And so that's kind of a background that I put. Especially, I really love this photo because I love the CN Tower, I love the baby Yoda that I drew, and I love highlighting that science is for everyone. Now, if you don't make art with your microbes, you could do other pictures from your research, like these fluorescent images that I took from the internet, or anything really, any beautiful graphs or anything that you're allowed and you have permission to share as your background. Now, if your research doesn't include those kind of images, or you don't have anything that you think would be right, another option would be using a free tool called Canva. And Canva is an amazing tool for all kinds of graphic design. And they have a whole section of their website that is dedicated to LinkedIn templates. So here are some of the examples that you can get for free. And you can fill in your name and what you're looking for, or you can use kind of these stock photos, and they're really easy to use. And like I said, Canva is free. So next is the perfect headline. Now, your headline is the first thing that people will see about you. And so you really want to make it impactful. And I've put an example of what my headline looks like and what it is on the side here. So you really want this headline to grab the attention of future employers or recruiters. It's also going to be the thing that people see when they search for you or when your profile comes up through any of your engagements. So you want to make sure that it captures everything about you that you want people to know. And this is a great time to remember that very few people are looking to hire a graduate student or a postdoc or a researcher, right? They're looking for somebody with specific skills, but nobody's really looking for a graduate student. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have a PhD student or a graduate student as your headline, but there's also ways to make it more creative, as well as you don't have to limit yourself to just one. You can separate different titles with these bars. And so one of the things you can do is really take that title of graduate student and make it more descriptive. So for example, when I was doing my PhD, I had my headline as microbiologist, because that way, if I was looking for an industry job, industries that were looking for people with expertise in microbiology would immediately know that that's what my graduate studies was in and that's what I was doing. Same for any other field you're in. You could write scientist, or you could write computational scientist, neurobiologist, or whatever fits for you. Now, additionally, if you are a neurobiologist, but you also do data science competitions on the side or training courses, you can also add that you're a data scientist, since that is a really marketable skill that people might be looking for. And if you're looking for jobs in science communication or science writing, or you have experience writing a blog or writing papers or writing for different organizations, I would definitely include that, because that is a key buzzword. When you're looking for those jobs, they can say, hey, they already have experience in that because their header says so. Now I want to go and look at their profile a little bit more. And you can do the same for any kind of experience you have. If you are on a graduate student association or a postdoc association or anything like that, you're really capable of really getting creative with those headlines. Now, next, everybody hates the about section or the summary section. And I know it can be really daunting and really hard. So one of the biggest things I'll say here again is keep that in mind, that the goal of your LinkedIn profile is what your story and your about should be about. So keep that in mind. So what would you want a recruiter or a potential employer to know about you if they didn't read any other part of your profile? And so you really want to take this and tell a story that sells yourself without just listing facts or titles or using point form. And don't just take the bullets that you wrote in your other sections and put them in the summary as well. This is really an area for you to say more. And so one of the things you can do is look at posts for your dream job and see what skills would you need to highlight to get that job. And so I definitely did this while I was looking for jobs, and I found it was really useful because I knew that I was interested in working with students, and I knew that I was interested in career development and these kinds of activities. So I made sure that in my About section, it highlighted all of the opportunities that I had over my career that worked in these sectors. I spoke about my passion for helping trainees with their career journeys and the experience I had to back that up. And so you really can use this section to craft that. And also feel free to add a sentence of what you're looking for. So if you're looking to build your network or explore careers or meet scientists working data science, or if you're at the end of your graduate career or your postdoc and you're ready to find a job, you can also write that you're interested in becoming a medical science liaison. And again, this helps. So if people are searching medical science liaisons, those words are now in your profile. So they may come to your profile and say, hey, they're looking at this and they're really interested in it because they wrote about it on their LinkedIn. They're not just looking for tons of different kinds of jobs. So I think that's really interesting. And one of the biggest things that helped me during this time when I was writing my About section was that I saw a job that I was interested in at a company called MyTax. And I looked at the job posting, and then I found somebody who was working in Toronto in that job. And I read her About section. And all of the things in the job posting were in her About section. So it spoke exactly to her passions, were everything that the job was about. And it really could see that symmetry that obviously she was the best person for that job because she had all of those experiences and was highlighting them right off the top. And so that's something I really wanted to strive to do when writing this section. Now, the biggest thing, you don't have to have the perfect About section to start. So make sure that you write anything. Really just get something on paper. And the easiest thing that you can do to take the pressure off is write it in a Word document and then write it, give yourself some time to edit it, write it again, edit it, and just don't feel stressed by like trying to write in that Word box. Save it, come back to it at another time, and you can always constantly be improving it. Okay, so next is the experience section. So here is where you're going to add in your current and past experiences. And of course, you always want to focus on the ones that are recent and that are relevant. So if you, I don't know, scooped ice cream at Dairy Queen, that's really cool. And that says a lot about your work ethic, but you might not want to put that on your LinkedIn if you wouldn't put it on a resume for any of the jobs you're applying to. So really try to stick with the ones that are the most relevant for your professional career going forward. And feel free to get creative with this. You don't have to only include your paid positions. You can also include your unpaid positions, including your extracurricular activities. And I know that there is a volunteer section, and a lot of those activities you might think should go in their volunteer section. The volunteer section gets pushed to the very end, and most people don't necessarily look at it. And so it's really important to push all of those experiences you want people to see and you want recruiters to see to the top. And so some of the examples of the experiences that I have in my section are PhD candidate when I was in grad school, teaching assistant, which is a great one to highlight the different kinds of opportunities I had, but also I put my volunteer experiences. So I did science communication and outreach for a really long time. And even though that wasn't for one organization and it was just a volunteer position, I think that it really highlights a lot of my skills. And so I put that as a position. I also was an ambassador for career development, and I swear I didn't come up with that title. That's what it was called in my department. But I did that for many years, and that really is why I'm perfect for this job in the ORT. And so I made sure to highlight that as well. So again, so it's at the top of the page for people who are looking at your profile who might be in the position to hire. Now, after you've listed those experiences, you also have to add descriptions of the positions, focusing on the outcomes and using numbers wherever possible. And this is exactly the same that you would do on a resume. You don't want to just say that you worked on Canada Albicans and you did lots of Western blots and RT-PCR and stuff like that if you're applying for jobs that don't require that specific background and that specific experience. So none of the jobs I applied to after my PhD actually required my PhD research experience. So I don't write anything about the actual research topic that I do. I maybe have one sentence saying what the general area is about, but instead I focus on the outcomes that are more translatable to other fields. So for example, my research resulted in X number first author publications. You can also use second author or third author publications to show your collaboration skills or show your writing skills through any reviews that you've written. You can say you crafted grant applications that were successful in securing a certain number of research funding. And those numbers sound really impressive. You communicated your research at different conferences, and you developed and executed lectures or workshops or things like that. And make sure that you indicate how many students that you helped in those workshops if you did them. And again, here, what we really want to do is only put bullet points about the transferable skills that you really want to highlight and that would be relevant for the kinds of jobs that you're looking for. Another thing you can do to take it to the next level is to add links to your work where appropriate. So this can be links to lab or personal websites, blogs or articles you've written, or projects that you've worked on. And again, this just gives a person coming to view your profile more of a chance to get to know you better. So for example, in the section in my profile where I talk about being a science communication and outreach volunteer, I list some of the opportunities that I've done and some of the things I've done. I was on CBC Kids News. And so I write that and also add links to some of those projects. So if somebody's interested in the Raw Talk podcast episode that I was on, then they can just click and link and they don't have to go find it. So it's a cool way just to promote yourself a little bit more and give more information to people about you. Okay, so this brings our next question. So we give everybody a little bit of a break to think about what transferable skills could you highlight from your research or academic career that maybe you don't have highlighted there yet. So what kind of things would you want to pull out from your current position that you think would be useful to get jobs in different sectors? Great. Project management is good. Method development is a good one. And with method development is also troubleshooting and problem solving, which I think are really great things to highlight. Great. Oops. Sorry, I was trying to multitask here. Great, awesome. So those are some great suggestions. Time management is great. Communication skills are great. Multitasking is also a really good one to add as well. But I'd say definitely project management is one of the biggest things we learn from our research experiences for sure. I'm going to take a second here to just look at the chat and see how we're doing. Okay, so somebody asks, I've heard that adding the open to work frame sends a negative message. That's a great question. That's a great statement. And I think that it goes back to the answer that the point that there's no right or wrong answer to anything for everyone. So for some people, open to work might be a turnoff because it might look like you're more desperate. But I think for a lot of people in your network, it tells them that you're open to things. And I personally, I'm just the kind of person that looks out for opportunities for other people. So if I see that somebody is looking for work, I do keep them in mind for other jobs. So I think it can be different for each person and each job searcher as well. So I would say you can always try it out, see if it works for you, and take it out at any point in time. Is there a suggested word count for the about section? I would say you have a little bit more flexibility here than you do in some of the other sections. You don't want to make it too long that people won't want to read through it, but I'd say a paragraph or two is probably reasonable. And I usually write it like, my passion is this, my experience is in this, but I've seen other people write it in the other format. I think it's completely up to you and your style. I think it's just more personal to write it in my own voice. And somebody asked about where they can find the recording later, and it will be sent out to all attendees. So don't worry about that at all. Okay, so let's keep on going. Lots of great suggestions. Oops. Let's see if I can get to that. Okay. So a couple of extra quick expert tips is to make sure that you edit your custom URL. And this is really easy to do, but all it means is that instead of having a string of numbers after a name, like this profile at the top here, you can change it to whatever you want. So if somebody already had a Maida Vary, I could add my middle name to make it a Maida Otelia Vary. But it's just something cleaner that is easier to add to things like your email signature, which I've shown on the side here. I always have my LinkedIn profile on my email signature. So if I'm ever emailing people and they're interested to learn more about me, they can. I also add it to the top of my resume and cover letter in the header, and I put a hyperlink so that if people are looking at my resume, they can click it directly. And I will tell you, I'm currently interviewing a candidate to join our office, or many candidates to join our office. And I definitely look at their LinkedIn, and I really appreciate when they're hyperlinked. So it's easy for me to get to. Okay, so next, one of the other tips is just to check out what your public profile looks like on different devices. And so you can edit the visibility to the public to see which sections you do want people to see and parts you don't want them to see. And I know I had some of the comments in the registration about how do you maintain privacy. And I think that the way you do that is you get full control over which parts you want people to see and what kind of visibility that you have. So you can limit it so that only your first degree connections have access to your information. You can do it to just people in your network, all LinkedIn members, or you can make it completely public. And so that's up to you. And even after you decide that, you can also check for each individual section if you want them to show or not. So you really are allowed to have that opportunity to control your information. And for me, when I was looking for jobs, I wanted anybody to be able to have access to my information if they wanted to look me up. So I kept it open, but it's completely up to you to decide what you're comfortable with sharing. So next, we want to talk about growing your network. And so I know that this can seem like a really daunting thing, but the best thing you can do is start early. So don't wait until you're looking for a job to build your network, unless you have to, and that's totally fine too. But it's easier to build your network gradually and organically. And so what I suggest people doing is, if you start out first, especially if you start out early in your research career or when you're not looking for a job, you can just slowly add your family, your friends, your lab mates, and other people in the department. And so what I did when I was in grad school was I added, when I did my rotations during grad school, I added all of those people slowly to my LinkedIn, especially as I felt more comfortable. First, I added only my really close friends while I was still building my profile. But then as I felt more comfortable with it, I started adding more people. And slowly, every time I had drinks with somebody, or anytime I went to an event and met someone, I slowly added more of those people. And it's really good and great to do that at the beginning of your research career, because while it was organic at that time to add my colleagues who were starting grad school at the same time as me, some of them graduated way before I did, and they got jobs. Or the people I met when I first was rotating in a lab, they were many years above me and they got jobs way sooner than I did. So by the time I graduated, I had this whole network on LinkedIn of people who had established jobs already in many different places. And so I got to watch their career path. I got to watch where they were going and see and learn from those things. And it allowed me to be open and aware of more jobs that people with degrees like mine went into. So it's really great to start early and build it kind of organically. And LinkedIn will suggest connections that are often pretty good. I found, especially at the beginning, especially if you connect your email contacts, they'll suggest people in your network that you can add, and that can be a great way to do it. And lastly, like I mentioned, send connection requests to people you meet at conferences and or events that you attend. I love when I talk to somebody at a conference or at a networking reception and they add me after. And I think it just helps build that relationship and is a great way for you to grow your network more organically. Now, that being said, always, 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 and if you only take one thing out of this workshop, I hope you take this, is always add a personal note when you're requesting a new connection to someone who is not in your immediate social circle. And so you don't need to write a personal note if you're adding your dad or your best friend or your coworker who you see every day. But if you're adding someone outside of that immediate circle, definitely get into the habit of adding a message. And so this is what it'll pop up when you go and try to connect with somebody. And you'll see it asks, do you want to send the invitation or do you want to customize the invitation and add a note? And always, always, always add a note. And so we'll talk quickly about what you should put in this note. So always keep it brief and professional. They do have a max, I think, of 300 characters, so you kind of have to keep it brief anyways. But indicate which event you met them at, or if you got connected through somebody else or somebody suggested you connect them, then include that. And always include why you're reaching out. And it kind of just makes it more inviting for people to answer. Now, make sure you do not request via the mobile app because it automatically sends requests without allowing you to add a note. So that's one thing. Make sure you're doing it on your browser, on your computer. And whatever you do, do not ask for a job. I know that might be self-explanatory, but I just want to say it out loud. But you're welcome to ask for other things like advice or for an informational interview. And I highly recommend taking informational interviews with as many people as you can, just to learn more about people's careers paths and what careers are open to you. Now, these personal notes increase the likelihood of them accepting and creates a written record of where you met them and why you were connecting. And this can be really useful if you want to maintain your network and reach out to them again later. Then you can remind yourself what you talked about that day and what kind of things you want to bring up again. Now, I know this is daunting, so I'm going to issue you a challenge. I want each and every one of you to practice writing a personal note by adding me to LinkedIn. So you can add me as a LinkedIn connection and write a personal note. And so this will give you the chance to have a practice script of what you would write to somebody that then you can have on hand to modify whenever you want to do it again. And I will say that all of you are in my network. I'm glad we're meeting today. And I think it's always great to do is after you come to a workshop, to reach out to the speaker and see if they would be in your network. So this will be a good way to practice. Now, if you're already connected with me and you haven't written a message to me before, feel free to just practice writing a message by sending one to me now. And or take this challenge and request a connection with somebody else that you're interested in. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the chat for a question, see what people are thinking. Would you list any entrepreneurial experience on LinkedIn or job applications? My research led to a patent pending essay, which I am trying to commercialize on the side. Wondering if I can add that or highlight that anywhere on LinkedIn. Absolutely. I think that's a great thing to highlight, especially if you want to go into more entrepreneurial positions in the future, if you want to go into business development and things like that. So one of the ways that you can do it is either adding it to your academic section as a part of your research career, whatever title you use. You can add a bullet saying that your research led to a patent on this thing for this application. And you can definitely add it there. There might also be a place where the publications are to also add a patent. I'm not sure. Or if you do end up commercializing it and you get a position in a company or something like that, even if it's a small company or even if you're just starting out, I think that'd be a great thing to highlight and definitely include in the About section as well. Okay, how to maintain relationships with the new connections you add to your network? Great question. That one's going to be next. So I'll leave that for a second. How important is it to contact and request others, work colleagues, past bosses, current bosses to add comments about me on my LinkedIn page? That's a great question. If you look at my profile, I actually have no recommendations, and it's something that I've always wanted to do, but I've just never got around to doing. I think it can only help. I definitely think it wouldn't hurt, but you can definitely do without it as well. I think I've done okay with myself. Same with endorsements. There are skill sections where you can write what skills you have. I don't know that anybody looks at those. And I don't know that anybody cares if you've been endorsed for the skills or not. But I mean, it always never hurts and it doesn't take very much to do. So yeah, definitely something to consider. I think it's always great to see when somebody thinks you've done great work. When is the best time to connect with current colleagues if you have entered a new position? I would say there's no perfect answer for that either. Whatever you feel comfortable with, I think is the right way to go. So feel free to do whatever is right for you. I think it's always great to give people updates on what you're doing with your life and how things are going. So I think that's great. Okay, so we'll leave that from there and move on a little bit more. So next, you have a LinkedIn profile, you are building your connections and you're growing them, which is great. So how do you build an active LinkedIn presence? And this is really, really important. And so to really be an active LinkedIn user, you can do a couple of things. And so you can engage with posted content. So you can see lots of people post things every day. And you can like their posts and comment on the articles they write, anything like that, because as you like and comment on things, they'll come up on other people's pages. So it'll show me, well, this person commented on this article. Now make sure you know that when you're commenting, it will be visible to a lot of people. So make sure that everything you're doing is professional, but that will help to build a presence where people will see you more. I always love when people get jobs or promotions on a personal level. So I love to congratulate people when good things are happening in their lives, but it also helps to build a LinkedIn presence. And some people also wish people happy birthday. I never do that because I wish the people happy birthday on other methods, but I think it's a great way to remind people who you are. And really make engaging on LinkedIn a daily habit. And my number one tip, the thing that I love to do, is actually put LinkedIn on my phone. And I know that may seem weird because it might seem like a really professional thing and not like your Instagram or your Twitter or your TikTok that you would check every day. But I really do check LinkedIn on a daily basis. And I think it really helps. And one of my favorite stories to showcase how well this works is I was coming home one day from my nephew's baptism, and we were driving in the car, and I was just hanging out. My significant other was driving, and I just had a couple minutes free, and so I was scrolling on LinkedIn, and I saw an article about this job that somebody had was posting, that their position was being filled and there was this open position. And if I hadn't been just casually scrolling, I might not have seen that. And so really a lot of the jobs that I've found to apply to were really because I'm on it every day and I'm really looking at what's changing and not just looking at the jobs that are being posted, but also what people are posting about, because sometimes those jobs you can see because people are posting about them, not just because there's a job post about it. I know that's confusing, but definitely make it an everyday habit. And I think it'll really help to build your presence. The number one thing you can do is really put yourself out there a little bit more, take that engagement to the next level. Don't just engage with other people's content, but make your own. And these really get seen by a lot of people if you write your own posts and your own articles. And this is really because a lot of people don't write articles or posts on LinkedIn. And so the material really gets encouraged in the algorithm, and it really gets shared. If your post is liked by somebody, then all of their network will be able to see it as well, depending on what your visibility and privacy settings are. So it's a really great way to get it seen by a lot of people. And so some examples of the things that you could write about is you could share highlights from a conference you went to or an event or a workshop and write about the things you learned. You can post about a great article that you recently read, advertise an event that you're hosting or participating in, or share examples of your work. And this is really some self-promotion again. And so this is also a great way for you to maintain relationships with your connections. So the more that you increase your engagement, the more that you will be showing up on their feeds, because they'll get these notifications that you liked something or you commented on something, and that will trigger their mind to remind them about you. You can also engage with their content. So really take those connections and make sure you're commenting on their articles and their posts. And that's really a great way to build that relationship. Now, the other thing you can do, and I love this, to really maintain the relationships you make with your connections, is just frequently stay in touch with them. And this may feel hard and daunting, but it doesn't have to be. You can, let's say you meet with somebody for an informational interview. And 6 months later, you're working on a project and the advice that they gave you was really helpful in that moment. Well, then you can just send them a message and say, thank you for that advice you gave. They'll really appreciate that you appreciate that experience and that it was helpful. You can send updates on how things are going and where you are in your career. So if you are starting to look for a job, you can update them and tell them that. The holidays and the start of the new year, those are great times where there's an opportunity to message people. So feel free to reach out to them then. And as well as you can ask them for an additional informational interview if you've already had one, but you have new questions, or ask them for an introduction to a connection. And so feel free to always do this to really maintain that relationship. And again, I'll give you an example of somebody who has done this so spectacularly. I was at a leadership conference a couple of years ago, and I was sitting at a table with this woman who was a nurse, and we chatted a lot during that event, and it was really great to meet her. We shared a lot of insights with each other, and she was looking for research opportunities. So after the event, she sent me a request on LinkedIn and added a note about how it was great to meet me and what she was looking for and stuff like that. And she has a really active presence on LinkedIn. So she writes about all of the opportunities she has had, the awards she's gotten. Every time she goes to a conference, she writes a summary. She writes about different things that she finds fascinating and things like that. And so she's always in the top of my mind. But she also, every time she's gone through her career, she's also reached out to me to tell me about the next career stage she's in. And it's maintained this really easy and organic relationship where she can ask for advice whenever she needs it. And then she also asked me to keep her in mind for different positions. So I send her job postings whenever something comes along. And it's felt like a really organic way, but I feel like I know her so much better than I actually do. So definitely some things to keep in mind. Lastly, a lot of us are research people, so we really like data and analytics. So really use analytics and numbers to find out what works for you. So this was a post that I posted a while ago about a conference that I was attending, a science communication conference, and I was going to be presenting at the conference with my agar art. And so I wrote a post, I tagged the people that were organizing the conference to get a little bit more of a boost so that they would see it and get more engagements. And then after that, I looked at the views. And from here, I could see that 41 people interacted with the post. and we had over 2,000 views. And it even shows you where the people are that viewed it, what kinds of careers they have, and where they're located. So you can really see what works and then post again on a different topic and try a different technique and see what the metrics for that are, and then learn what works for you and then repeat. So really using this as an experiment to optimize your activities. And you can also monitor the stats to see how many of the times are your posts or engagements leading to people looking at your profile. So your profile on your dashboard, it'll show you how many people viewed your profile, how many people viewed your posts, and how many times you've appeared in searches. So you can really do different activities and see how much it changes. And like you can see here, this was my profile views this week, and it's gone down since last week. So I know that something I was doing before was working better than what I'm doing this week. Okay, so we're really going over time. So I will, but we'll keep going. I want to talk about strategies for using LinkedIn for career exploration and networking. And I know a lot of you are interested in this. We got a lot of comments in the registrations about this. So one of the things that I love the most is that you can use LinkedIn for so many different ways, but you really need to know what your career goals are. And again, keep that in mind. So if you're looking for a postdoctoral position or a faculty position, you might be using LinkedIn in a very different way than if you're looking for a career outside of academia. So you want to remember that for academic positions, not many PIs are on LinkedIn. There are some, but it's not the main way that people are posting postdoc positions or faculty positions. That doesn't mean that LinkedIn can't be useful. It can be a way to connect with different postdocs or different people in the labs of that you're interested in, or learn more about the institutions that you're interested. So you can still use it, but in a different way. Whereas if you're looking for a career outside of academia, a lot of different industries use LinkedIn heavily. So that would be a great way. And I'll show you a little bit more tips of that. And especially if you don't know what you want to do, LinkedIn is great for really doing a lot of research on that. So using LinkedIn for career development research, the easiest way you can do this, and I did this a ton during my PhD, is search career and job titles that you're interested in. And so if you're interested in a career as a medical science liaison, you can search for either the jobs, the people, or in the groups. Now in the people, you'll find people with those careers, and you'll be able to look at them and see what their path was. What skills do they have that maybe help them to get there? And then especially if you're early in your research career, then you can try to emulate some of those experiences and get some of those skills. Although, of course, no one path is the right path to get there, but it can give you some kinds of ideas. And don't worry that people will see that you're looking at them. It's better that people see that you're looking at them, because it puts them on your radar, or puts you on their radars. Don't worry about that. If you search in people, you can also see whether you have first or second connections with those titles, and you can ask maybe for somebody to introduce you to somebody that has that title. And of course, if you search in the job section, you'll find job postings and see what kind of skills and experiences those jobs are looking for. Now, the next thing you can do is follow companies that you are interested in working for, and this will really increase the number of your post articles and job posts that you see from them. And there's ways to get alerts as well, as if a company that you're really interested in is hiring, you can set up an alert specifically for that. And this is great, especially if you get an interview, that you can know what's going on in the company. You can say that you've been tracking them and you know the different advances that are coming up that you can mention in the interview. It'll also tell you that if you have any people in your network that work there, so that you can reach out to them for an informational interview. And so these are people that you could contact directly. So that's a really neat tool. I also love using LinkedIn to make my profile better. And so, like I said before, there's no one right way to make a LinkedIn profile. So this is a great way for you to find profiles that you're drawn to and that look professional or aesthetically pleasing, and then think about what kinds of things those people are doing that you can adopt in yours. And I've definitely learned more about how to build a good LinkedIn profile by studying other people's profiles than I learned in any of the classes that I took. So definitely just take this time to do your research on other people's LinkedIns. Now, using LinkedIn for your job search. So of course, there's this job tab at the top, and it will automatically recommend open positions for you based on your profile. But again, if your current title is graduate student and you don't want a graduate student position, those recommendations won't necessarily be optimized off the top. But what you can do instead is start searching for jobs, set up job alerts for the titles that you're interested in, and then you'll get email recommendations for those related jobs. And I think that's another great way to make it a daily habit, is just getting some of these emails that make sure that you're not missing anything that's perfect for you. And the more you look at jobs postings, the more they'll recommend related job postings. They'll kind of get a sense of what you're looking for and start recommending those to you more. Now, I always recommend, if you're looking at a job posting, to visit the company's website directly for job info. This is because sometimes the jobs have been taken down from their website but are still on LinkedIn. And so it's a good job to not waste your time in making resumes and cover letters for those jobs if they don't actually exist. Be cautious of jobs that were posted many weeks ago. Again, you might find that information on the company website and not on LinkedIn. And they may already be in the process of filling that job, and you may not have a chance because of that. And companies often repost the jobs on LinkedIn regularly so that they look fresh, but that doesn't mean that they are fresh. So again, just check out the company's website for that information. And always consider reaching out to a first or second connection at those companies to learn more. I've saved tons of time by doing that, by finding out whether they had an applicant in mind or whether they were hiring externally, because sometimes they don't tell you that they're not hiring externally. And lastly, a lot of you mentioned in the suggestions you wanted to know more about easy applies. And what I'll say about that is I don't know anybody who's ever gotten a job from easy apply. I'm sure it works. I'm sure somebody does. But the easier it is to apply to a job, the more applications they're going to get. And so I think because you're not allowed to give any extra information, you're also not allowed to pitch yourself any more for that position. So you really want your profile to be tailored perfectly to that job. Okay, so last thing is to let recruiters know you are searching for opportunities, and there's a way to indicate this on your profile. You can indicate what job titles you're interested in, what locations that you're open to, what kind of work you're open to, whether it's full-time or volunteer, and who you want to know that you're looking. So maybe you don't want your boss to be able to find out that you're looking for jobs, so you can put it just to recruiters, or you can put it for all members. So those are some of my biggest tips. So I want to leave you with this question: which section or activity on LinkedIn are you going to work on first after this discussion? I'll let you answer that while we look at some of the questions from the chat. How do you stand out for entry-level positions with no experience but with educational qualifications? I think that's a great question. And the answer there would be to just make sure that you're highlighting as many of those transferable skills as possible, because that's really what's going to put you apart. Make sure that you try to find ways that in your educational career, you got some of the skills required for those entry-level positions. And at the end of the day, if you don't have the minimum work experience for a job, it's important to remember, if they find somebody that does have a minimum work experience, they're likely going to pick the other person. So I think sometimes you can do only the best you can, but if you're missing one of the experiences or skills, you might not have a chance anyway. So don't beat yourself up for that. That just means it wasn't the right job for you. Do companies automatically scan my profile without me knowing if my profile is public? Which companies tend to do that? I don't know the answer to that one. I'm sorry. I'm sure it differs based off of each individual person. What is an informational interview? Great question. An informational interview is something you can request from people in your network. So you can send an email or a message to somebody and ask if they would be willing to have a half-an-hour coffee chat with you. Especially now that it's over Zoom, it's a lot easier to do this. And so what it means is you just sit down with that person over Zoom and ask them some questions and get to know about their career a little bit more. And there's usually no pretense of finding a job or anything. It's just for information sharing and really allowing yourself to learn more about those careers. And it's a really, really powerful tool. Okay, so that's, we're at time. So feel free if you need to move on. I'm so grateful to everybody for joining us. I'm happy to stay here to answer more of people's questions. But before I do that, I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming, for taking this time. I will be sending out a survey after to get your feedback. I'll send out the video link as well as the slides if you'd like them. And feel free, if you're from UHN, to reach out to me after and book a one-on-one appointment so we can go over your profile, and I'd be happy to offer more optimized advice. So with that, I will stop the recording and we can just talk a little bit more about your personal questions if you'd like to stay.